Hello everyone and welcome back. Today's case has got it all. Lies, scandal, murder and mystery. It's one of Canada's most famous cases, but I'd never actually heard about it until recently. Today's case is about the complicated beauty that was Evelyn Dick. I'm wearing the red lippy today in homage, but, well, not in homage because she was a murderer, but we don't pay homage to murderers, but like tribute, not tribute. No. Let's just move on. Evelyn Dick was born Evelyn McLean in Beamsville, Canada, to Donald and Alexandra McLean on October 13th, 1920. Her parents had travelled from Scotland over to Canada to find better work opportunities. Evelyn didn't have a particularly happy childhood. Her father abused alcohol and her mother was said to have had a horrific temper. Her parents didn't get along and they pretty much stayed out of each other's way. Evelyn didn't associate much with the neighbourhood children. Her parents preferred her to find friends that were of a higher social standing. The McLeans lived very well, they had a lot of money, so much so that they were able to send Evelyn to a private school, the Loretto Academy for Girls. Now this is when rumours started to circulate. They had a lot of money, but Donald didn't have a high-flying job. He worked in the office at the Hamilton Street Railway, but what he did have was access to their accounts. So the rumours that were circulating was that he was helping himself to their finances. Evelyn grew up to be an attractive young lady and her parents saw this as an opportunity to have her marry into a wealthy family. Her mother encouraged her to use her good looks to entice men into buying her expensive gifts like furs and jewellery. Evelyn tried hard to become recognised in the higher-up social circles of Hamilton. She would host lavish parties and spend lots of money on her friends. But the social acceptance was never really reciprocated, probably because they knew that she was trying too hard and they could see straight through her. Evelyn became the focus of rumours while she was still in her mid-teens. She was spending a lot of time with older men who were buying her expensive gifts. She apparently had more jewellery and furs than was considered proper. In July 1942, Evelyn gave birth to a daughter called Heather. This just further fuelled rumours that she was having affairs with older married men. It was considered improper at the time to have children outside of wedlock. But Evelyn assured everyone that it was okay. She was married to a Mr. White who was stationed overseas, but no evidence was ever found that this Mr. White existed. Heather was mainly looked after by Evelyn's mother Alexandra, whilst Evelyn was able to go back to her old ways, partying with the high society. Then in September 1944, Evelyn gave birth again to baby Peter. But when she came home, she didn't have Peter with her. When her friends and family asked where he was, she said that she'd given him up for adoption because her father didn't want another baby in the house and she couldn't raise two of them alone. In June 1945, Alexandra split from Donald and decided to move in with Evelyn and Heather in an apartment downtown, which must have been brilliant for Evelyn because it meant a live-in babysitter. After a month or so, Evelyn announced that in 2 weeks' time she was going to be marrying a man called John Dick. Alexandra had never heard of this man and she'd been living with Evelyn this whole time. Alexandra thought that Evelyn was involved with a man called Bill Bohozuk, but apparently not anymore. So who was this John Dick? John Dick was born in 1906. He travelled with his parents from Russia to Ontario, Canada as a child in 1924 as they were fleeing from the Russian Revolution. In the 1940s, John moved to Hamilton for work. In June 1943, he landed a job with the Hamilton Street Railway as a streetcar driver. That's where Evelyn met him because that's where her father worked. John was 15 years older than Evelyn, but they hit it off straight away, and Evelyn told John that she was widowed and her husband had died in World War II. A few weeks after they met, they were engaged, which makes more sense when you learn that Evelyn thought for some reason that John was rich. He wasn't. Her parents didn't like him because he wasn't rich, and they decided not to attend the wedding. The couple bought a house together, but the deeds were in Evelyn's name, and John didn't put any money down for the deposit either. It wasn't long before Evelyn realised that John wasn't rich, so she went back to her old partying ways and went back to her ex, Bill Bohozuk. John, after seeing what was going on with Evelyn, decided to move out. He went to visit Donald, Evelyn's father, and demanded that Donald tell Evelyn to start behaving like a respectable wife. Donald didn't approve of John anyway. He didn't think that he was good enough for his daughter, so he refused and he said he didn't want to get involved. John told Donald that if he didn't help him, he'd go to the police and tell them about Donald stealing from his employer for years. As you can imagine, this went down like a lead balloon. Donald was furious and threatened to kill John. This obviously didn't go as planned, so John went and told police about the threat that Donald had made against his life. And surprisingly, Donald did not help John get his wife back. Fast forward to March 16th, 1946, when a group of 5 children found what they thought looked like the body of a headless pig laying partway down the side of a steep slope. What it actually was the torso of an adult male, and the police were called. The head, arms and legs of the torso were all missing, and there was a deep wound in the abdomen suggesting that someone had tried to cut the torso in two. A police identification established that the torso belonged to John Dick. Dick's cousin Alexander confirmed that John had been missing since March 6th. And Evelyn, of course, being John's wife, was taken to police headquarters for questioning. And what she told investigators was quite surprising. Evelyn Dick responded to the news that police had found her husband's torso by saying, "Don't look at me, I had nothing to do with it." She then started telling the first of several wild stories to the police. First, she said that a smartly dressed man had arrived at her door and asked where John was. He said he was going to fix John for messing around with his wife. He then left and never told Evelyn who he was. Inspectors weren't convinced, especially when days later police learned that Evelyn had borrowed a car from a man named Bill Landig. Landig received the car back with blood all over the front seat, the seat covers missing and bloody clothing in the back. Nice clean-up job, Evelyn. Evelyn had left a note saying that her daughter Heather had cut herself and that's where the blood had come from. I mean, it would have had to have been a hell of a cut. Later on, inspectors found out that that blood belonged to John Dick. Faced with this new evidence, Evelyn comes up with another story. She tells the police that a mysterious man had called her and told her that John Dick had got another woman pregnant and he was going to get what was coming to him. He then asked if he could meet up with Evelyn and if he could borrow her car. Evelyn explained that she then met up with the man, who had a large sack, and he said what was inside the sack was part of John. So then she drove with him to the dumping site. As you would. When the police asked Evelyn if she was at all alarmed by the fact that she was in a car with part of her husband, she said that she wasn't happy about it, but then it's also a mean trick to break up a happy home, in reference to this woman that John had allegedly impregnated. And Evelyn continued to deny that she'd killed her husband. Later, Evelyn changed her story again and said that Italian murderers were responsible for John's death and they'd been hired by Bill Bohozuk. She's dragging in a boyfriend now. During all of this, investigators had been to Evelyn's house and her parents' house and they made a series of discoveries. They found a pipe with bullet holes in it, a pair of John's shoes that were bloodstained, a revolver and cartridges, bone fragments and teeth, and some saws. I think we know what the saws were for. They also found the charred remains of a Hamilton Street Railway uniform and a necktie belonging to John. Police also found a beige suitcase. Inside the suitcase was a block of concrete. Inside the concrete were the remains of Evelyn's baby, the one that she'd claimed to have given up for adoption. Faced with these new discoveries and hearing that Bill Bohozuk had been taken in for questioning by police, Evelyn came up with another story. She said that Bill had killed both the baby and John Dick. In the end, Evelyn, Donald MacLeod and Bill Bohozuk were charged with murder. It was decided that Evelyn should be tried separately on October 7th, 1946, and the trial was a media frenzy. The public and the media were obsessed, just as they would be if it happened today, a pretty young woman up in court for the grisly murder of her husband. During the trial, the media would hear stories about Evelyn's little black book of names and her various escapades with all of the high society men of Hamilton. Now I want to read this word for word because apparently this comes straight from court testimony, and if that's the case, this would have been a scandal for the time. Is it not a fact that the father of that child could have been any one of 400 men in this city? Not that many, she says. 300 then, he suggests. Well, no. Tell the court how many men you've been involved with then. Maybe 150, Evelyn says. Mrs. Dick, I want you to name those men for the court right now. Who are they? Well, his son for one, she replies. Were you indicating his honour, the lawyer asks. Yes, the judge's son. Apparently later the judge issued a restraining order preventing newspapers from publishing the names Evelyn revealed. How he dealt with his son is not a matter of public record. I bet it isn't. The great parenting didn't just end at Evelyn's childhood. Evelyn's mother Alexandra came in to deliver yet another blow. Alexandra MacLeod agreed to testify against her daughter in return for immunity. There's a candidate for Mother of the Year right there. She stated that Evelyn had been absent from the house for a prolonged period on the 6th of March, the last day John Dick had been seen. Alexandra also said that on the 8th of March she'd asked Evelyn if something had happened to him. Evelyn replied that he wouldn't be coming around anymore. And also testified that her husband owned a handgun and several large knives, so she made sure to stick the knife in on the husband while she was on the stand. Excuse the pun. By the end of the trial, there was clear evidence to suggest that Evelyn had been involved in the murders, much as she might have helped to plan it, but there was certainly not clear evidence to suggest that she'd actually committed the murder. Nevertheless, she was found guilty and she was sentenced to hang on January the 7th, 1947. Evelyn appealed her sentence and there was another media frenzy. Her new lawyer impressed upon the jury the strong possibility that it was Donald MacLeod who killed John rather than Evelyn. Ultimately, the verdict was overturned because when Evelyn gave her statements to police, her lawyer was not present, and so that evidence was deemed inadmissible. Then came the trial of the murder of baby Peter. A psychiatrist testified that Evelyn had the emotional mentality of a 13-year-old due to a traumatic childhood. Due to this, she was given the lesser sentence of manslaughter and sent to Kingston Penitentiary for life. Bill Bohuzuk and Donald MacLeod finally got their trial. Bill was cleared of all charges due to the prosecution's only witness being Evelyn, and she refused to testify. Donald got 5 years as an accessory to murder and was given an extra 5 years for stealing $200,000 from his employer. It was ultimately established that the cause of John Dick's death was likely not the 2 superficial bullet wounds in the torso, but more likely a gunshot to the head, something that could not be proven because the head was incinerated along with his limbs back at the house. It's believed that the torso was too difficult to cut through and would not fit on the stove, which led to the decision to dump the remains in a secluded area. In the end, no one was ever actually convicted of the murder of John Dick. On the 10th of November 1958, Evelyn Dick was granted parole. She was given a new identity and no one knows where she went or what happened to her. She completely vanished. In 1985, she was pardoned and her file was permanently sealed. To this day, people still drive past that house and take photos of it, where a body was chopped up and incinerated. Most of it, at least. There's still so many questions in this case. Who were the fathers of Evelyn's children? And did they pay for her legal bills and her new identity on her release? Who actually killed John Dick? Was it Donald MacLeod because he was worried that John was going to go to the police about his theft? Or was it Evelyn because she just hated him? Or did they work together? Why did Evelyn kill the baby? The nurses said at the hospital that she seemed to be fond of him. Why didn't she just give him up for adoption? And after she did kill him, why did she keep his body? What happened to Evelyn after she left prison? Did she start a new family, or did she live in isolation worried that people might recognise her? We'll likely never know now because her records were sealed and she'd be 100 years old today. It'll always be a mystery. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this case. I did. It's not often I find a big case that I've never heard of before. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I've got a lot more videos planned and I'd love for you to stick around to see them. Have a great day and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.